Good afternoon from New York. I am Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS As It Is. This is another edition of CWS As It Is. My guest this evening is Nicole Cole. I'm not going to do much of an introduction. I am just going to bring Nicole on so we can start this conversation. We have a packed afternoon. Nicole, good afternoon and welcome to CWS As It Is.
Good afternoon, Selwyn Collins, and thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. Before we get into it, can you summarize, and I know this might be unfair, in one sentence, who is Nicole Cole?
I am a clinical social work practitioner, a mother, and a constitutional commissioner, as well as a current student.
Oh, that's lovely. What does a constitutional commissioner do, and how does this position affect your advocacy for children and women?
A constitutional commissioner is one whose office reports directly to the National Assembly, and that office is directly responsible for statutes that are enshrined within the Constitution of Guyana. Hence, Article 212Q has a list of 14 statutes
Mm-hmm.
that constitute the Women and Gender Equality Commission, and the Rights of the Child have another 8 or 10 statutes. And these commissions are duly constituted by the National Assembly to carry out specific functions as it relates to the protection of women and children and the recognition of their rights as human rights.
Give us a little background as to your journey towards this position. Where did it begin? How did you get there?
Well, I would like to first share a little on a distant past, but one in which I had to make strategic decisions that would have led to my being where I am today.
All right, we'll
And
get into that. We'll get that. I like this preemption. This is beautiful. But tell me, how does one become a constitutional commissioner?
okay, let us say you belong to a specific interest group.
Uh-huh.
For instance, on the commission, we have different components under which you come. So there's a component for those who are advocates for women's rights from ancient times or who have a history of that. Then you have the component that which I represent, which is culture and ethnic. I belong to a cultural ethnic group, which is also a part of the African cultural groups. That's the Rastafari community.
Mm-hmm.
And when there was a wide consultation as to who were eligible to sit, the Rastafari community was included. So the process was a transparent one in which you had your representatives attend a meeting at the National Assembly, and right there you went through an election process, which was voted on. And so I went there in 2009 and was duly voted to represent the Rastafari community under the heading cultural and ethnic groups.
Just a quick thing. Why do you think they voted you?
Okay, perhaps the persons who sent me forward saw that within my qualities in leadership is one of being tenacious and, of course, committed. Because if you are going to represent the people, two important qualities to have is a tenacity to fight for what you believe in, and of course, a commitment to see the cause through to the end.
So tenacity,
And,
commitment,
and commitment.
strategy. Let's get into strategy. You had a situation at some point. You had started to tell us that when I asked you the first question about how you become a constitutional commissioner. Let's bring that in. What happened that you had to be so strategic in your movements?
Well, 14 years ago, I faced a situation whereby I almost lost my life. And fighting for my life was one of the greatest things that I would have ever done because it's responsible for me being here and talking to you and your wider audience.
Mm.
Uh, that decision, I think, changed my life for the better because it's never easy to leave a relationship, more so one in which persons you profess to love each other, you are engaged to be married, and because of a continuous propensity to communicate through violence, I took a decision that my life was worth more than staying and trying to fight for a relationship that wasn't working out basically as it relates to the communication strategies in how we solve conflicts that arose.
Mhm. You know, when you think about, and I don't want to say gender violence because you're here this evening to talk about violence against women. And oftentimes, when the term gender violence comes up, there's this hue and cry about, well, what about men? So I want to speak specifically to who you are and what you have experienced and what you're advocating. When you think about violence against women in Guyana, what comes to mind?
One word: impunity. Um, Impunity to commit it, because the severity at which we are currently witnessing it being committed, it boggles the mind when a young woman will receive 41 stabs, and
Mm.
when another young woman will wash up on the seashore naked, and then another one will wash up with no head, no hands, no feet. It leaves you breathless, speechless, and at sometimes feeling hopeless because Guyana do have progressive laws. It's not that we do not have laws that are uh, way above those that our sister Caribbean countries have. We do have them, but we appear to have a problem with implementation and a judicial system that just seems stumped at the crease.
Why do you think there is such a culture?
I think there is such a culture because there is a paucity of convictions within our criminal justice system as it relates to handing down sentences that will help to deter such a behavior. The whole function and the purpose of a judicial system is to monitor behavior that are deemed deviant and to punish such behavior if when committed by persons within the society, to send a message to others that this behavior is unacceptable. So if we have violence against women being committed even by persons within quote unquote leadership positions within the society and nothing happens, it sends a message to the wider populace of men who are potential perpetrators.
You were saying,
Uh, I think you asked the question as to why do I think this impunity exists, the
yes,
violence
exactly. Hmm.
against women, and I was saying that I believe that it's because we have a paucity of convictions within our criminal justice system that punishes such behavior. And also, I think that when we have leaders in very prominent high positions, holding high offices within our country, when they too would engage in such behavior and it goes unpunished, it will send a message to the wider populace of potential abusers that this behavior is acceptable. So what we have is an impunity to uh, see the violence against women and children being committed because we're seeing an intensity at which it's happening. To have the hands, heads, and your limbs cut off, it boggles the mind as to what may have happened there and what is the motivation behind such a heinous crime.
What would you say are you and or groups that you're a part of doing to bring attention, to bring awareness to this, and some sort of justice?
Well, for instance, the Women and Gender Equality Commission and the Rights of the Child, to which I belong to, we've been doing constitutional work. But apart from that, I'm a part of several NGOs, and we have been doing work to raise awareness. one such NGO, Citizens Against Rape. There's an impunity for rape. Rape have had a 1% conviction rate in our criminal justice system for years. And recently that have moved from 1% to actually 0%, with us not having any convictions. And so last year, for International Women's Day, what we did is to hold silent anti-rape march. And we had children lead that march, calling into attention that our children were being maimed, because in 2012 we had a young lad, a young child out of a village on the East Coast at the tender age of 2, who was brutally sodomized to death. And so when such things happen in a society and you do nothing, then all these, the impunity at which we are currently witnessing the violence and the maiming, will continue. So we've been marching. We've also attended seminars and workshops and have been sharing information, whether it is via our television program or having a radio program, or even partnering with the police. Partnering with the police to share information, how we can better relations, and how we can go about the procurement of important things that we need to have convictions. For example, rape kits, and the importance of having rape kits to us having conviction rates improved within our criminal justice system.
You know, I want, just for the benefit of the women and young women who are listening here today, young girls who are listening tonight, the domestic violence, you had your experience and you made a decision to leave. But it might be safe to assume that it is not the first time it happened. How did you get to that point where you decide this is it?
It was it was that hit that got me 12 sutures in my upper lip.
Wow.
And yes, if you look at my lip, you see a little bump. That is not natural. It's actually 12 sutures that went to restore my upper lip with a hit that was designed to actually break my neck. And I thank God that I'm here, still standing and still being able to speak and advocate to end violence against women.
How do you deal with the memories?
When talking about it like how we're discussing it here now, and you look back and you look at where I would have been to where I am now today, I think I can be a positive motivation to those who would like to leave and to seek out better relationships. I don't believe that no relationship that is supposed to be loving and uplifting should be harming you. Mm-hmm. So if you are in such a relationship, then that is not love, it's exploitation and abuse. But wanting to have a better life for my son, I was raising my son, and my son did see when I had my lip split, and he went into a kind of hysteria that kind of spoke to my deeper consciousness. He was just at the tender age of 7, and I think he ran and pushed my fiance so hard that he fell, and he got up and left the house immediately. It was like if something struck him too. Mm-hmm. But I saw my son got involved at that tender age, and I didn't want him to continue to see that with me. And seeing him so hysterical, he thought I was going to die with all the blood that was gushing out and stuff like that. So I didn't want to terrify my son ever again in his life.
What do you say to people who would ask the question of women who are in these type of situation, why don't you just leave? It couldn't possibly be that easy, but what do you, a woman who've had this kind of experience, what do you say to those people?
I know it's not easy just leaving. When you love someone and you would have committed via an engagement, as women, we try to stay and to make it work. Look at many things, but one of the things that struck me with him, he was very remorseful. If he would have had a bout whereby he hit me, he was the type who the poem says, "I got flowers today." And so he had this way of wooing you right back into forgiving him and believing that it was never going to happen again. But what happened is that the very next time it happened, the propensity and the intensity at which it occurred was even greater than the last time. And so those were eye-opening moments. And so I had to leave before I ended up without hands. We have some of our survivors who are so maimed, they have no hands, they are blinded, they are scarred, more scarred than I am. I mean, I have scars, but not as great as some of my other sisters who would have survived and are unable to find gainful employment because they are now termed differently abled and just cannot work for long hours on a 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 job.
How does your education in social work help you in your current endeavors?
Well, education, I believe, is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So I believe in that quote from the great Nelson Mandela. That was the only motivation for me in trying to create a new life and a new image from being battered and bruised to being a survivor who is a scholar and pursuing academia and also advocating on behalf of women and children to end the scourge of violence against women. And so education for me is my ultimate weapon or my ultimate trump card as I seek to better my circumstance because, of course, I am trying to put my life back together. It is still a work in progress. All is not done because I'm still at the level that I want to move forward.
Some call it this violence against women an epidemic. Is that accurate?
I would want to put it further as to say it's a pandemic, and that is using UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's terminology when he declared it a public health threat and asked for countries to scale up the response to a public health response, which would mean having a response similar to that of the HIV/AIDS response.
What are you noticing is What are you noticing is happening as people become more and more aware of the seriousness of this pandemic, as you put it?
Well, I will say to you that we have an increase in reporting because for last year, the periods January 1st to November 17th, 2014, at least the commander for the A Division reported an increase in rape reports. And I think that stemmed from the awareness that many groups and NGOs have been doing, including Citizens Against Rape. And as well as for this year already, the police is reporting a 62% increase in rape reporting. So I'm thinking that the advocacy and us trying to raise awareness that violence against women is a crime, is not a quote unquote intimate something, and it's a private something that should be wished away. So even if you have persons in high offices committing it, that it should be left alone. It is a crime and it should be dealt with as such.
Mm-hmm. What is your biggest excitement about being a social worker?
People-centered development.
Ah.
It's watching someone come in a system that they would have come through the system raw as the diamond in the rough.
Mm-hmm.
And your job now is to polish or to attempt to bring that person through a system whereby they discover their own potential and that they have the solutions to their own problems that they are struggling to cope with. And so for me, people-centered development, whether it's my ability to use art, music, or play to alleviate depression in the patients that I would have worked with.
And as you participate in this healing process, or sort of helping to shift their paradigm, what is your biggest pushback? What is your biggest challenge for most of these victims?
My biggest challenge is for them to remain thinking positive. Mm-hmm. I think that thoughts are responsible for some of the negative feelings and thoughts, especially depressive thoughts and thoughts of suicide. So for me, my biggest challenge is to keep them always seeing that tomorrow is going to be a new day and the sun is going to rise. And even if it rains, we must learn to enjoy the rain because even the rain have a function with our atmosphere.
And what is your biggest fear about being a social worker?
My biggest fear is not being able to save a life, not being able to save someone not being able to save someone who may be on the verge of committing suicide or throwing in the towel as it relates to fighting uh, in a relationship that they're trying to get out of. That is my biggest fear of not being able to reach that person and to instill in them some kind of hope and motivation through using my own lived experiences and trying to give them hope. Because at the end of the day, that is what the person who is struggling to get out of a violent situation needs. They need to have that audacity to hope that tomorrow will be a better day and
What
there is help for me out there.
what
Somebody
troubles
cares.
what troubles you most about this pandemic in Guyana?
What troubles me most is the current nonchalant attitude by law enforcement, by our leaders who should be setting an impeccable example for our younger and so because we have this impunity and because we have this don't care an attitude that doesn't value women, an attitude that doesn't say that we are important and you are important to the foundation of society. It worries me that with all of our very progressive laws that we have, they appear to be very impotent. And for that, I weep for our women and children because just recently, as recent as within the week, we've had a young mother, not even at the age of 30, who would have been brutally stabbed to death by her spouse who is on the run, basically. So, as we speak, there is a current case that
What
is engaging the attention of law enforcement.
what is
Yeah.
usually people's reaction when they first learn that you yourself is a victim?
I see surprise. And then I see admiration in some persons will genuinely express admiration for my tenacious attitude and the fact that I've been able to overcome such a horrible period of my life and to put my life back together and to move forward positively and trying to champion a worthy cause of ending violence against women and children. It's one of the most cruel and inhumane barbaric practices that is happening around the world. Hence the scaling up of the response by it being deemed now a public health threat and a pandemic uh, basically. So it is incumbent for all governments to have systems in place that seek to protect women. And that is why the Women and Gender Equality Commission, Rights of the Child, Indigenous Peoples, and other constitutional bodies have been sworn into office because the government has signed on to and has committed to international treaties that they were going to be protecting the rights of women and children, albeit even if they're doing a woefully inadequate, poor job of it.
HIV/AIDS has received a lot of attention and direct action to bring awareness to this disease. Is there a similar effort towards violence against women in Guyana?
No, no, there is not a similar effort. And this is why Justice Roxanne George uh, from the Guyana Association of Women Lawyers for a couple of years now would have been advocating that Guyana needs a response to gender-based violence as similar as the response that HIV/AIDS would have gotten. We need money. Money is the reason why I am where I am. I thank God for strong family members who put their monies on the table and ensured that I had rehabilitation, that I was able to go back to school and had a shelter. And so Justice George have been calling, along with myself, for a business coalition on gender-based violence, because there is such a coalition on HIV and AIDS. And also, she would have been calling for government to invest in low-income housing for women who want. See, it's easy for you to say leave, but where does the abused woman go? In
Mm-hmm.
most cases, she have no money, she's poor. She has been dependent on the man for sustenance. So where does she go in this attempt to escape if there's a paucity of halfway houses, resources that the state is not providing for her? And so this is the case. This is the current case in Guyana. I myself, a couple of years ago, when I met with His Excellency President Ramutar as part of the Women and Gender Equality contingent, that met with him to seek out to address a range of measures to address the scourge, pleaded with him to establish a survivors fund to help survivors of gender-based violence, because as I would have alluded to you earlier, there are persons who would have survived who have no hands, they are maimed for life, and they just cannot work a 9 to 5, 8 to 4 job. So the fight needs to have money put into it. The HIV response has been a brilliant response to which I would have been a part of for many years. And I'm saying that if that same type of response is given through the fight to end violence against women, then we are going to see a significant reduction on lives being saved.
Why why should the diaspora care about gender or violence against women in Guyana?
The diaspora should care because this is their country of birth. And for all of them who are in the diaspora, we all are involved and we all are consumed, if I am to a passage from our late great Martin Carter's poem. And when we witness the type of violence we're seeing against women here in Guyana, it must touch some chord deep within you, that humane chord that wants to do something to see women become better productive citizens in the society and not to have them all maimed, because all the studies are showing that gender-based violence has a huge economic cost
Mm-hmm.
on the production in the society and a country's gross domestic product. So you would want to do something to ensure that this most valuable resource is not being abused and exploited at such an alarming rate, and that you respect the womb, because all life is derived from that sacred place called the womb.
Considering your intimacy with violence against women, um, how should I put this? What would you say to
But it
this, the civil societies and the politicians on how they can help to bring about some kind of awareness and change to what's happening to women in Guyana?
I would like to see the recommendations. The Women and Gender Equality Commission has already reported 3 times to the National Assembly, and as soon as we have a new constituted parliament, we have another report waiting to be laid into that new assembly, and we have recommendations. I would like to see the recommendations that have been made, because we would have gone as a commission. We've gone across the 10 regions in Guyana and spoken to women on the team Access for Justice for Women. And so we have a plethora of recommendations that are there. And if those recommendations are taken on board and we have the better infrastructure implemented and the resources, both human as well as financial resources, committed towards the fight, I think that it will go a far way in them not only saying during this election period that women matter, but at least putting talk into action, quote unquote, as the colloquial term goes, putting your money where your mouth there.
I want to thank you very much for sharing your time with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. I feel very honored and blessed, and may God continue to bless you and the good work that you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. So have a good evening.
You too. God bless you.
God bless you too.